welcome back to Sparky's Dream, a podcast about Manchester United. I'm your host, Lewie, a lifelong United fan, roadie and photographer, and I'm still trying to get my head around that out into Selhurst Park. Not a great performance by any means, but a comeback win and the first time United have taken all 3 points away against Palace in 5 years. So today we're breaking down what went right and wrong and the not so standout performances and some worrying signs, particularly in that first half, and what I think it all means for where we're heading with the impending AFCON schedule. Okay, so let's start on a positive note, I guess. Selhurst Park has been a nightmare for us in recent history. Our last win there was February 2020. Palace have been stubborn, organised, and they always seem up for it against United. And Glasner's Palace have been the epitome of that this season, as they don't have the flair of Eze or Elise anymore. But they found a way to make it work, playing the 3-4-3 system too. To be honest, before the game and on the back of the Everton match, I was thinking we do well to get a point out of this game. It's amazingly how quick the fucking pessimism sets in after a shit performance like that. And predictably, we didn't start well. In fact, it felt like we were attempting the same things as we did against Everton with similarly poor conviction and tempo. It was a pretty turgid watch, to be honest, wasn't it? Palace seemed to find a lot of space in midfield. I mean, I know Wharton is a class player, but this was supposed to be a 3-4-3 showdown where you'd think that the midfield would cancel each other out. But again, we saw more evidence of Bruno's kind of positional ill-discipline and Casemiro's limitations exposed as we were kind of overrun and scrambling on so many occasions. I mean, that might seem a little harsh on Bruno. I mean, I've got some stats that we'll touch on later that seem kind of bonkers to me, but I mean, we'll take all the outrageous passes that don't come off because we know we'll do some that absolutely do come off. But his occasional headless chicken approach to triggering a press does do us in a lot. He's got the energy to do it, obviously, but when we've got Mount in the team, I think that responsibility should probably fall on him. He's far better reader of the game in those situations, in my opinion. That front three should be doing the majority of that work. We have seen De Ligt and Luke Shaw jumping out of their line in recent weeks to bolster any gaps in midfield or cut out the ball straight into midfield. But it just didn't look like we were doing that on Sunday. And good opposition coaches with decent players seem to be able to exploit that area kind of consistently. Cunha, Sesko and Mbeumo really looked like they were starting to find a rhythm offensively and defensively before the injuries. You can't expect Xerxes, I guess, to come in and fill the void as effectively. Mount, yes, because he's kind of proven to do it, but Xerxes still felt a little sluggish and off the pace in the first half, in my opinion. He was definitely working hard and closing down, but just not as efficient and as effectively as we need him to be, really. We did see Ahmad and Mbeumo reunited on the right-hand side for this match. I don't really know how we can split these two up anymore, to be honest. Especially now in the run-up to AFCON, surely we have to build this relationship at no cost whatsoever and get the most out of them before they leave. It's our biggest attacking threat, and breaking it up for the balance of the team is to the detriment of us. We've consistently offered very little attacking output down the left this season, and I don't think that's going to change until we get a quality left wing back or Dorgu suddenly kicks into gear. Although it feels like we're preempting our game plan, it's still up to the opposition defence to stop those two creating chances, which nobody seems to be able to do so far. And not that his attacking output is anywhere near what we need, but that was Dallow's best game for us this season so far. Do you think? Just no fuck-ups really, and generally an effective foil for the things that we were trying to create down the left. We really need him to be putting in these types of performances consistently from now on, because he's going to be in and around this team whether we like it or not. But back to the right-hand side though, it wasn't their most effective first half. In fact, Mbeumo looked very frustrated at one point, picking up a yellow card for dissent. But they kept pushing and trying to create things. I mean, the whole front line didn't really look cohesive at all during the first 45 minutes. But I just felt that it would only take like a pass or two to stick to put us through. But the passes weren't really looking like sticking, were they? Rather inevitably, we did go behind. Wharton found a bit of space and put an amazing through ball into the box. And Yoro made a pretty clumsy challenge that earned Palace a penalty. Not Yoro's greatest week, to be honest. I thought he was pretty poor against Everton too. But I have been surprised to see all the attention being put on his name after this game. There's that clip of Mount seemingly consoling him after the match, but I'd hardly say his form has dropped off a cliff. I think the club knows what they have with him, and I'm sure they'll do their best to protect this guy at all costs. in my opinion. He's a genuine kind of Rolls Royce in the making and doesn't need to be overplayed. I mean, we do have options there. We did fumble through to half-time, but it did seem pretty evident after their goal that perhaps Palace were running low on energy too, and their European exploits were catching up with them possibly. Not that made me any more optimistic for the second half. I mean, our ability to exploit obvious weaknesses still leaves a lot to be desired. Never more so than failing to exploit the extra man against Everton. But anyway, frustrations aside, we immediately looked like we had a bit more space and time on the ball in the second half. The passes started to stick, and then the patterns of play became a bit more evident. It looked like we'd really grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck, whereas in reality I think Palace were completely out of steam. I've never seen Glasner so animated and aghast on the touchline watching his team fade so fast. But that aside, we looked like we'd learned some things from the Everton match. Our midfield seemed to be having the run of the ball. We were a bit more aggressive and started to get onto those second balls, which we were doing so well when we were on that run of 3 wins in a row recently. The wide centre-backs stepped up, pushing the wing-backs higher, forcing them to be involved. Dalot in particular was actually influencing attacking phases of play. I mean, Shaw, Dalot, Mount and Xerxes were starting to look like a cohesive unit. There's actually an interesting short read on the Athletic website explaining far better than I can what was happening down the left, like dummy runners, pulling defenders out of position, etc. Xerxes came out in the second half like he was on the back of a run of 5 games. Although he was running round in the first half, he now looked like to be running with a bit more direction and purpose and looked far more confident when he was on the ball. And when we've got players functioning on both sides of the pitch, we're obviously going to be more of a threat and give defenders more to think about. Xerxes was rewarded for his efforts with a goal on 53 minutes, another from a set piece, but he took it so well. He managed to get a jump on his marker from Bruno's free kick, buying him enough space to get a shot away. At no point until I saw it in the back of the net, I think he was going to score from there. Smashing one across the face of the 6-yard box is always a good option, but this was a hell of a strike. At first I thought the keeper should definitely be saving that, but the power and the accuracy from short proximity didn't really give Henderson much chance at all. I think that's his first Premier League goal in almost a year. I mean, obviously he hasn't played that much, but we need someone firing up front in Sesko's absence, and even just as a bit of competition to push each other on. Before Sesko's injury, I honestly thought that Xerxes could be on his way in January. I don't think he fits Amorim's long-term vision of this team. He's not an out-and-out number 9 and we're overloaded with 10s, but you get the feeling that he loves the club and he wants to play for this club, which at least ticks the fundamentals and non-negotiables box demanded by Amorim. I mean, Amorim gave him some praise after the match. He said, "We played better because Josh played better in the second half." And I'm sure that's something that will leave Xerxes with a lot of confidence. I mean, he does have the ability to affect games if he's up for it. One thing that definitely is in Amorim's long-term plans for United is scoring goals. And if he can bag a few more over the next few weeks, then I'm sure he won't be going anywhere yet. Mount grabbed a second on 62 minutes, again from a set piece, and once again Bruno grabbing another assist. People will say that that's the easiest assist he'll ever get, but how many people would have had the audacity to knock it or roll it across to Mount there? He could have seen the Palace defence weren't concentrating as much as they should have been. I mean, even Henderson had given up barking orders at them. So Bruno, just observing all this, just casually rolled one to his side. I mean, Mason Mount, fortunately, was just a little bit more switched on than the Palace defence, and he managed to compose himself over the course of a stride or two and just hit the ball through a depleted wall, half of who reacted, but it ended up completely losing their shape in doing so, and the ball just got drilled into the bottom corner. It was a great reward for all of his industriousness throughout the game. He's a real quality player, Mason Mount, isn't he? He always seems to do a job for us. He managed to complete the full 90 minutes too, which is encouraging, as he does seem to want to try and get things happening down that left-hand side if he's playing instead of Cunha. He's got the intelligence to affect the game in various positions as well. I've got a feeling it's going to be him that replaces Mbeumo during AFCON. So the fact that he's hitting the back of the net, and Xerxes too, is what we need to see a bit more of. The AFCON window is creeping up on us, and we really need to see other players fit and in form, creating chances and putting them away when that comes around. A quick word on Bruno though. I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets frustrated seeing him so deep. Sometimes he was dropping back to receive a 5-yard pass off the centre-backs. I mean, surely that's just completely unnecessary. The guys at the back are more than capable of hitting him on the halfway line. I mean, especially in the second half like this, where there was no real intensity in the press from Palace. I'm really not sure why he feels obliged to do that, or why no one on the field can tell him no, or kind of just move up. But with all this aside, he's created 35 chances in the Premier League this season, 5 clear of anyone else. He continues to work his magic from wherever he's playing. I mean, it's quite phenomenal, really. But doesn't Amorim feel even the slightest curiosity as to what he'd be like in this system if he was just pushed up into one of the 10s? As I mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be Mount and Cunha once AFCON kicks in, but even if Mount was the one sitting next to Casemiro and Bruno playing ahead of him, surely that sounds like a better platform and structure. I know people will say, well, Mount isn't an 8 either, but I reckon he's got more of those characteristics than Bruno. Certainly the kind of positional discipline. And even Cobby in that 8 position, with Bruno ahead of him, seems like, on paper, at least a better balanced team. I mean, Cobby isn't going to run around like Bruno in that position, but if we've got Bruno, Cunha or Mount playing in those 10 positions, they're all instinctively going to drop a little deeper to get on the ball and get involved, which puts less stress on Cobby to make those progressive passes that everyone is doubting is in his armoury. I'm starting to feel the worst with Cobby, to be honest. When he came on Sunday for the last 5 minutes, it did look like he sat alongside Casemiro, with Bruno pushing up, which very faintly suggests that Amorim could be thinking about that option. Or could have just been he was told to sit and Bruno just took it upon himself to charge up front. It's a faint hope, but I'm holding on to that for now. One thing that is going in his favour, though, is that it's getting pretty evident that Ugarte is becoming more and more detached from this first team as the weeks go by. So when chances do become available, I think Cobby, for now at least, is further up that pecking order. As well as Mason Mount playing a full 90 minutes, it was interesting to see Casemiro also getting a full 90 under his belt. Is that the first time that's happened this season? I'm not sure. But why did he play all of this game, knowing that we've got another game against West Ham on Thursday? Maybe Amorim was just fearing that we'd lose shape and composure when he went off. I mean, that's happened on numerous occasions this season already. But I don't think Palace were offering any risk, to be honest. And that's about an off-the-pace team as we're going to face in the second half all season. But I guess Amorim felt that he couldn't risk the result on this occasion, and it was worth risking his fitness for the West Ham game. Surely, though, he's only going to be able to play a maximum of 60 minutes against them. Or does he mix it up and give someone else a start and bring Casemiro on only if we need him against a struggling West Ham team? But if they think Casemiro's got 60 minutes in him, I'm sure he's going to start. But we haven't seen the impact of any short-term recovery on any of these players yet this season. I mean, maybe Shaw's in a similar situation. I'm still amazed by the lack of injuries for Shaw this season. And he had another solid game against Palace, to be fair. But maybe over these next 2 games, we need to start managing his minutes. It was great to see Leacher finally getting on the pitch after a long layoff. He didn't have much to do, in fairness. It was a type of cameo that I'm sure the coaching staff and medical team were hoping for. How far off full fitness he is, I'm not sure. But given Amorim's tendency to swap out the centre-backs during matches, I could see him starting on Thursday and bringing Shaw or Heaven on, depending on the state of the match. I'd really like to see Shaw starting at left wing back, though, at some stage. Obviously, now Leacher's back, they're both going to be in contention for a starting spot in our left centre-back position. I mean, Leacher did take a while to get back up to speed, in my opinion, after his last lengthy layoff, so it could be Shaw's for the foreseeable future. But Shaw is arguably the most suited profile for that position in our squad. Obviously, it's a physically demanding position, but we've seen how significantly more fluid this team can be when we've got good fits in those positions. Amorim, though, is no gambler, is he? He plays things incredibly steady, which can be pretty frustrating for me anyway. The one time he did, mixing things up and giving people a chance, he got turned over by Grimsby, so I'm not surprised if he doesn't do anything. So although it's something I'd like to see, even if we get 60 minutes out of him or if we bring him on for the final 30 when we're chasing a game, I think it's worth the risk, especially as we have Heaven as a specialist left centre-back in the squad too. So where does this result leave us? So United climbed to 7th on 21 points, just 3 points off a Champions League place and 4 points behind City in second. Wins like this against a Palace side who's played in Europe a few days before were the only positives that we were holding on to when we knew that we wouldn't have any European football this season. We'd be rested and hopefully able to exploit these teams. With West Ham and then Wolves up next, dare I say, 2 very winnable games. Can we build on this? This time next week, we could have won 3 on the bounce again and look like we're really starting to gel. Momentum is everything for an inconsistent team like us. Okay, that's all for today, Reds. Thank you for tuning in to Sparky's Dream. Have we just witnessed the latest turning point of the season, or are we going to see an Everton-esque performance against West Ham? Fuck knows. But I'd be grateful if you could tune in at least one more time so we could pick it apart. Follow me and drop your thoughts on all socials at Sparky's Dream Pod, and please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and tell all your fellow Reds. This has been Sparky's Dream. Football, music, united.